Well, hey everybody. Welcome on back to the old DWS Dirty Windshield series for May the 2nd, 2022. Today's kind of an interesting day, May 2nd, Monday. A year ago, I was entering, I believe it would have been week 4 of my radiation slash chemotherapy 7-week program, week 4 of 7. Not just a little bit over the halfway point, and I was already starting to feel extremely burnt out from the treatment. I was having difficulty swallowing, and my energy was just being zapped. I wasn't eating much. I was watching a video that I'd made in the morning just before I went in for my chemo, and I could just see my face, like I was just, no energy, everything just being zapped out of me, how quickly, the decline is. Interestingly enough, though, May 2nd is always an interesting and memorable day because it was on this day 36 years ago that Expo 86 opened. And I cannot remember if, I'll have to check the calendar, but I can't remember if that was midweek back then, or regardless. I remember it being kind of a day like this, overcast, a little bit of rain. I remember cutting school, a bunch of friends and myself, of course. We were in journalism class, and we were, getting ready for year end, and there was like a dozen of us who went down for the opening ceremonies, and get in and walk in. And I remember us cutting school, taking the bus down to 22nd Street Station here, which is actually just ahead of us here. There's the guideway, the SkyTrain guideway just in front of us here, the elevated platform. The ALRT system, which had opened actually in November of '85. I remember writing that, covering it for our school newspaper, the Seaquam Signal, which was an entirely community-funded newspaper, or community advertising, small businesses. There goes SkyTrain there, one of the, what is that, a Mark II, Mark III train vehicle? Of course, the original ones were just individual cars, couldn't walk between them. Yeah, and I seem to recall, there's so many, I had so many good memories, like the Seaquam Signal. We would go get advertising from local businesses. And basically we had a budget roughly, I think it would have been $400 to $600 a month. We would print it once a month, and we'd take it out to, I think it was Valley Web Graphics out in Port Kells. I would deliver it, take it out, we'd do our layout, then we'd run it out to Valley Web, and of course they'd print it, or I think we did like 3 colors or something like that. And it was a really good experience, the offset printing and doing the layout. It was just a great time. Anyways, I would do the photography and the music section. My friend Rob, he was photography. And then there was Chris York, she was an editor. There was Joanna McCutcheon. There were all these great people. There was Kelly. There was, God, there were so many people. Now that I think about it, like the class, it was small, but it was a lot of fun for a guy like me. Because I didn't really like school that much. I never really, applied myself, to mathematics. I look back and I think, God, if I just actually cared, I might have, done well, but I didn't. But looking back, you know, I had so much fun in the journalism class, and it was such a good time. And I remember leaving school, we'd get on the bus, we'd come up here to 22nd Street, and then from there we'd ride the SkyTrain down to Main Street, and then we'd hop off and we'd go in through that entrance, of course, which was a main gate, of course, because it was right at the SkyTrain. And, you know, I remember the first month just being like an absolute wet experience, but it was a great time. I actually had a job there for a very short time working at McDonald's, on the what now is the Roundhouse, that one. And it was only for a couple of days I did it, just enough to get an employee pass, and they would use color-coded stickers for each month. But, you know, Secure was like, oh, they're using a gold sticker this month. Okay, well, I've got my employee pass. So I would just keep changing the sticker, and that worked from May all the way through to October. I quit the job, and I think I was, you know, I got a job at KFC a little closer to home. In grade 11, I did that, you know, for a while. But so many good memories. Just, you know, I think back, you know, we had the newspaper, and there's a SkyTrain up there. Just leaving 22nd there. So many good memories. Like May 2nd, this was the official opening, and I remember, I think Prince Charles and Princess Diana were there. And it was just a lot of fun. It was putting Vancouver on the map. Of course, Jimmy Pattison having a lot to do with it, the Socrard government under Bill Vander Zalm. I mean, we'd come out of that bad recession in 81, 82, 22% interest rates, 20% unemployment. I mean, it was brutal. But there were some big projects, and of course, that was a huge boost to the economy. The amount of people that came through Vancouver to see that exhibition, that World's Fair. And it was really fun. It was a good time, and I'm so glad. I mean, 1986, I think back for the year in music. I mean, there was so much good music. Bands like U2 and REM were getting bigger. The alternative scene was almost becoming mainstream. You know, you had great artists that year releasing some of their greatest music. I mean, Van Halen, 5150, that album. I listened to it, and I'm sure a lot of people who are into music production listen to that album today and just go, wow. You know, I think Mick Jones, Don Landy, I mean, and of course, Eddie, just the sound coming out of the speakers. I remember like just being totally blown away by that album, like how awesome it sounded. And it had, you know, people were, you know, I know they were ragging, oh, it's not David Lee Roth, blah, 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 but it didn't matter because that Sammy Hagar was like just an awesome musician. I mean, I love Sammy Hagar. I mean, the guy's Mr. Rock and Roll, right? I love that album. I mean, Love Walks In, what a great song. I mean, great ballads. I mean, if there was one thing that Eddie Van Halen was so good at, was writing rock and roll ballads. Dreams. And the whole band just, you know, kicking ass. Peter Gabriel's Soul. Now, here's a man, I think he would have been like in his mid-30s, 36 or something at the time, because he was very young when he was in Genesis. When they formed Genesis and whatever it was, 67, he was like 16 or something. Their first album would have been 19. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I mean, the guy was like 24 when he left Genesis to pursue his solo career. But by the time he got to So in '86, I mean, that to me was my favorite. It's still one of my favorite albums of all time. It's, you know, it is up there in the top 5. That album, I just remember listening to it when it came out, and I was like, wow, what a great album. You know, this guy who was on the fringe was now like just massive, popular, mainstream, but in a good way. And listening to that album, it was like listening to the Van Halen album, 5150. You know, it's like this guy went from prog rock to punk to modern pop to whatever you want to call it. I mean, the guy was just, to me, he could do anything, everything. Peter Gabriel, absolute genius. And then, of course, a couple of years earlier, I'd seen him with David Bowie there at BC Place on the Serious Moonlight tour or whatever in '83. Let's Dance, and, you know, which... And to think back to '86, I remember Pet Shop Boys, Please, that album. I mean, good Lord, you know, the music at the time was just unbelievable. Tom Cochrane and Red Rider. They're, you know, his kind of, when he sort of changed the name from Red Rider to, you know, him being kind of like the main focal attention of the band or whatever. But that album, I mean, there was so much good music. Rush, which they had released Power Windows in '85, but of course they went on tour in '86, which that concert was actually May 17th, 15 days after the opening of Expo. And I remember that night, oh my God, it was still raining. I remember getting off work, getting home, getting into the old Charger, picking up my, you know, Chris and Joanna, and I can't remember, it was like, there was like 12 of us that went down to that show. We had really good seats on the floor. And that album too, just, I mean, it kicked ass. I mean, 1985, '86 were such good years for music. And '87 too. It was just magical. And these albums, like, for me to be 16, 17 years old at that time, it really, I had a driver's license, I was playing guitar, I was writing my own songs, recording them on, you know, those little Tascam PortaStudio 4-tracks that I'd rent because I had a job, I had money. And it was a great time for me as a kid. Even though I was an absolute failure in school, I didn't care. I didn't apply myself. I was like, I'd rather make money. And it was all good. It was just a good time. So May 2nd, you know, I always look back kind of with a certain amount of fondness. You know, my birthday is May 30th. So I never forget May 2nd, 1986. I never forget May 17th, 1986. Because it was before my birthday. You know, it was a good time. And of course, it carried over into '87, the year I graduated. I left school. And, you know, it's like my whole life had changed in a year from '86 to the summer of '87. I was a totally different person by '87. You know, all the friends I had in grade 11, the newspaper stuff, and that all kind of went by the wayside. And I started, you know, doing my own thing with music and friends, and, you know, we all change. And it was a good, you know, that was me basically, you know, getting set up for the next, you know, 13 years of my life that would, you know, I had met my, what is now my ex-wife, but I would have, you know, the kids and all that stuff, and, or 14 years, 2001, '87 or 2001, you know, and that's like 21 years ago, and, you know, somehow I've just managed to, and the best thing that's happened to me, basically, was meeting Tess almost 2 years ago now. Well, no, I knew her many years before, but as going out, you know, almost now, you know, at least, you know, a year and a half now. It'll be, you know, 2 years in September, basically. And that's been like a real highlight of my life. You know, I love her so much. You know, she is so special. And so I can look back now and I can see this progression that life is getting better. You know, I mean, I thought it was great back then, but I don't have the same worries as I did back then about the future and a job and oil crisis and all this stuff. And, you know, I feel like I'm a kid again, even though I got no hair, I got, you know, the cancer treatment, but I have a woman who loves me and I love her. And it's just great to be alive, to what some people say, oh, there's your God, but, you know, struck you down with cancer. And it's like, no, I don't look at it like that, you know. If anything, that's all my wrongdoing. You know, I bring it upon myself, right? Always. But everything is, God has so much mercy for me. We all die. You see, this is the thing. Once you accept this fact that you are going to die, you cannot beat it. You do not have to believe in God. You can curse him. You can curse God. You can, you know, like, there is no God. I'll condemn my children if, you know, blah, blah. I mean, who's stupid enough to do that? You know, swearing on your children's head that there is no God. And me, I believe in God. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that God is a God of mercy. Even though for all the stuff that you read, it's a story of triumph over tragedy. That's what it is. And it uses real people to convey this message. A lot of people didn't ask for it, but it came to them. A lot of, you know, people that you would not want as friends play key roles. You know, adulterers, liars, murderers, whatever. But we can see the goodness in them, and we can actually see a little bit of us in them. So for me, I just see that life is getting better. It really is. Even with my cancer and all the side effects, I know I'm going to die. Of course. My dad's passed away, my mom. This life is tough. Nobody said it was going to be easy. Nobody. Unless you're, you know, royalty or born into a wealthy family, but even that, they have their issues too. I am grateful I am alive because there's so many people who don't get to see 52, nearly 53 years. Some didn't even make it out of the womb. Some passed away young, some newborns, young children, toddlers, young children, teenagers, because they were born with conditions. So I'm grateful. I am so grateful that I've made it this far. And how selfish it would be of me to, like, turn my back on God. Yeah, there's times I get mad. But I realize that it's not worth it. You know, that it's actually me with all the problems. I've created them myself. It wasn't God. It was me. Because I didn't know how to deal with issues. I didn't trust people. I didn't take them for their word. Or maybe I got used. But anyways, May 2nd, to me, this is like a time of reflection. Good times. And to keep things in perspective, how fortunate I've been, even with the ex, even with, you know, the trials and tribulations of losing family. But I've been blessed because I've met someone who loves me and I love her, and life carries on and we move on, and hopefully we grow and get stronger. So anyways, I just wanted to pass that along. I will shut off. I wish you all a great week. Shavu Tov, Baruch Hashem, and Shalom. Hey guys, I just remembered something I also forgot to mention. It was also in grade 11, I was also taking my private pilot's instruction, my lessons. Forgot about that. And it was in August when I did my first solo flight. Another thing that was really exciting about 1986, not only was I, writing songs and making music, and well, in a very limited way, of course, like I still am today, but I was flying. And I was flying out of Langley, Skyway flight school, with several instructors, Mike and Ken and Judy, and who else was also Jake, who ended up coming over here to Boundary Bay. It's such a good time, I remember, like, this Boundary Bay Airport wasn't open back then. I used to actually race my car out on the runway until they closed it off and they put the speed bumps in. But you could get into the runway because the fence was knocked down at the back there. Of course, the police would routinely patrol it. But what a great time. And then, of course, the municipality started to put money in with the federal government, provincial, I think it was provincial, federal, municipal governments that banded together and made that airport kind of what it is today. And of course, it's still expanding. It's a small little airport. It's a lot of flight schools out of there. And so I would actually do a lot of my I'd leave Langley and I'd fly over the house in Sunshine Hills, and then I'd come out to Mud Bay, practice some stalls and spins, and then head back to Langley. And the funny thing about Langley, and it's so cute because Tessa, I was showing her the plane and she knew the owners of that plane. Of course, her dad was a pilot for, I believe it was Air Canada, the big, the big jets, of course. And, she lived out in Langley, just a couple of minutes from the airport. And, it's so awesome to talk about that stuff because she is, in a direct flying, family flying. And so we can, reminisce. And, I always talk about the trees at the south end of the runway at Langley, as well as the little road by the runway on the north side. And it was like, I look at it compared to Boundary Bay. Boundary Bay is like, I don't know, 5,000 feet or something. And the runway at Langley was like 1,900 feet. But I swear it only was like 1,500 feet of usable runway because of the markers and all that stuff. So the memories of training there, it was like there was no room for error. If like you overshot the runway, you were doing a go around. Like it's like so yeah, it was really good. So I forgot to mention that aspect. Anyways, 1986, May 2nd, 1986, Expo opening, just great memories all around. I look back and wow, today I'm heading home here. I'm feeling pretty damn good. The rain has stopped finally, and the sun has come out as it usually does in the afternoon out here in Ladner, where I live. Most fortunate, most blessed, grateful, even in my old place, that's like 52 years old. The old townhouse or whatever. My house actually used to just on 61st there. Maybe I sold it too early. I think I probably did. It's added $500,000 in like 4 years. Boy, did I ever miss the boat and screw up on that one. But, all down to experience. So anyways, that's it. Shalom, Baruch Hashem, over and out.